Smartphone, Troubleshooting and Repair, Guide to Mobile Phone Repair. Cell phone network technologies, 2G technology. There are three common technologies used by 2G cell phone networks for transmitting information. Frequency division multiple access, in brackets FDMA. Time division multiple access, in brackets TDMA. Code division multiple access, in brackets CDMA. Although these technologies sound very intimidating, you can get a good sense of how they work just by breaking down the title of each one. The first word tells you what the access method is. The second word, division, lets you know that it splits calls based on that access method. FDMA puts each call on a separate frequency. TDMA assigns each call a certain portion of time on a designated frequency. CDMA gives a unique code to each call and spreads it over the available frequencies. The last part of each name is multiple access. This simply means that more than one user can utilize each cell. FDMA separates the spectrum into distinct voice channels by splitting it into uniform chunks of bandwidth. To better understand FDMA, think of radio stations. Each station sends its signal at a different frequency within the available band. FDMA is used mainly for analog transmission, while it is certainly capable of carrying digital information. FDMA is not considered to be an efficient method for digital transmission. digital information. FDMA is not considered to be an efficient method for digital transmission. In FDMA, each phone uses a different frequency. TDMA. TDMA is the access method used by the electronics industry, aliens, and the telecommunications industry association for interim standard 54 in brackets IS 54 and interim standard 136 in brackets IS 136. Using TDMA, a narrow band that is 30 kilohertz wide and 6.7 milliseconds long is split time-wise into 3 time slots. Narrow band means channels in the traditional sense. Each conversation gets the radio for 1/3 of the time. This is possible because voice data that has been converted to digital information is compressed so that it takes up significantly less transmission space. Therefore, TDMA has 3 times the capacity of an analog system using the same number of channels. TDMA systems operate in either the 800 megahertz in brackets IS 54 or 1900 milli TDMA systems operate in either the 800 megahertz in brackets IS 54 or 1900 megahertz in brackets IS 136 frequency bands. TDMA splits a frequency into time slots. Unlocking your GSM phone. Any GSM phone can work with any SIM card but some service providers lock the phone so that it will only work with their service. If your phone is locked, you can't use it with any other service provider, whether locally or overseas. You can unlock the phone using a special code, but it's unlikely your service provider will give it to you. But it's unlikely your service provider will give it to you. There are websites that will give you the unlock code, some for a small fee, some for free. GSM. TDMA is also used as the access technology for global system for mobile communications, in brackets GSM. However, GSM implements TDMA in a somewhat different and incompatible way from IS 136. Think of GSM and IS 136 as two different operating systems that work on the same processor. Like Windows and Linux, both working on an Intel Pentium 3. GSM systems use encryption to make phone calls more secure. GSM operates in the 900 megahertz and 1800 megahertz bands in Europe and Asia, and in the 850 megahertz and 1900 megahertz, in brackets, sometimes referred to as 1.9 gigahertz. Uh, 1.99 gigahertz band in the United States. It is used in digital, cellular and PCS-based systems. GSM is also the basis for integrated digital enhanced network, in brackets IDEN, a popular system introduced by Motorola and used by Nextel. GSM is the international standard in Europe, Australia and much of Asia and Africa. In covered areas, cell phone users can buy one phone that will work anywhere where the standard is supported. To connect to the specific service providers in these different countries, GSM users simply switch subscriber identification modules in brackets SIM cards. SIM cards are small removable discs that slip in and out of GSM cell phones. They store all of the connection data and identification numbers you need to access a particular wireless service provider. Unfortunately, the 850 megahertz / 1900 megahertz GSM phones used in the United States are not compatible with the international system. If you live in the United States and need to have cell phone access when you are overseas, you can either buy a tri-band or quad-band GSM phone and use it both at home and when traveling, or just buy a GSM 900 megahertz / 1800 megahertz cell phone for traveling. You can get 900 megahertz / 1800 megahertz GSM phones from Planet Omni. And online electronics firm based in California. They offer a wide selection of Nokia, Motorola and Ericsson GSM phones. They don't sell international SIM cards, however. You can pick up prepaid SIM cards for a wide range of countries at Telestial.com. Telestial.com. CDMA. CDMA takes an entirely different approach from TDMA. CDMA, after digitizing data, spreads it out over the entire available bandwidth available bandwidth. Multiple calls are overlaid on each other on the channel, with each assigned a unique sequence code. CDMA is a form of spread spectrum, which simply means that data is sent in small pieces over a number of the discrete frequencies available for use at any time in the specified range. In CDMA, each phone's data has a unique code. All of the users transmit in the same wideband chunk of spectrum. Each user's signal is spread over the entire bandwidth by a unique spreading code. At the receiver, that same unique code is used to recover the signal. Because CDMA systems need to put an accurate time stamp on each piece of a signal, it references the GPS system for this information. Between 8 and 10 separate calls can be carried in the same channel space as one analog AMPS call. CDMA technology is the basis for interim standard 95 in brackets IS 95 and operates in both the 800 megahertz and 1900 megahertz frequency bands. Ideally, TDMA and CDMA are transparent to each other. In practice, high power CDMA signals raise the noise floor for TDMA receivers, and high power TDMA signals can cause overloading and jamming of CDMA receivers. 2G is a cell phone network protocol. Click here to learn about network protocols for smartphones. Now let's look at the distinction between multiple band and multiple mode technologies. multi-band versus multi-mode cell phones. Dual band versus dual mode. If you travel a lot, you will probably want to look for phones that offer multiple bands, multiple modes, or both. Let's take a look at each of these options. Multiple band. A phone that has multiple band capability can switch frequencies. For example, a dual band TDMA phone could use TDMA services in either an 800 megahertz or a 1900 megahertz system. A quad band GSM phone could use GSM service in the 850 megahertz, 900 megahertz, 1800 megahertz or 1900 megahertz band. Multiple mode. Multiple mode in cell phones. Mode refers to the type of transmission technology used. So, a phone that supported AMPS and TDMA could switch back and forth as needed. It's important that one of the modes is AMPS. This gives you analog service if you are in an area that does not have digital support. Multiple band / multiple mode. The best of both worlds allow you to switch between frequency bands and transmission modes as needed. Cellular versus PCS. Personal communications services in brackets PCS is a wireless phone service very similar to cellular phone service, but with an emphasis on personal service and extended mobility. The term PCS is often used in place of digital cellular, but true PCS means that other services like paging, caller ID and email are bundled into the service. While cellular was originally created for use in cars, PCS was designed from the ground up for greater user mobility. PCS has smaller cells and therefore requires a larger number of antennas to cover a geographic area. PCS phones use frequencies between 1.85 and 1.99 gigahertz. In brackets 1850 megahertz to 1990 megahertz. Technically, cellular systems in the United States operate in the 824 megahertz to 894 megahertz frequency bands. PCS operates in the 1850 megahertz to 1990 megahertz bands. And while it is based on TDMA, PCS has 200 kHz channel spacing and 8 time slots instead of the typical 30 kHz channel spacing and 3 time slots found in digital cellular. Changing bands or modes is done automatically by phones that support these options. Usually the phone will have a default option set, such as 1900 megahertz TDMA, and will try to connect at that frequency with that technology first. If it supports dual bands, it will switch to 100 megahertz if it cannot connect at 1900 megahertz. And if the phone supports more than one mode, it will try the digital modes first, then switch to analog. You can find both dual mode and tri-mode phones. The term tri-mode can be deceptive. It may mean that the phone supports two digital technologies such as CDMA and TDMA, as well as analog. In that case, it is a true tri-mode phone. But It can also mean that it supports one digital technology in two bands and also offers analog support. A popular version of the tri-mode type of a phone for people who do a lot of international traveling has a GSM service in the 900 MHz band for Europe and Asia, and the 1900 MHz band for the United States. In addition to the analog service, technically, this is a dual-mode phone, and one of those modes, in brackets GSM, supports two bands. (3G) and 3GS technology.